Both of you.
All right, everyone. Now we are back live, and this seems to be working now for the moment. So, welcome back to day 2 of our event that we're hosting with Matthew and Lisa. So, we wanted to get on and do a YouTube live and talk to Matthew for a little bit about different issues that come into play with nib grinds and things like that. And Lisa's going to lead Matthew through a little bit of an interview. I'm going to I'll be watching the chat and answering any questions that you all might have. Be sure to put any questions in the chat. Hi, everyone. We're seeing everybody here. If you have any questions, I'll read them out loud, and we'll see if Matthew or Lisa will answer them. So, Lisa, you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. So, Matthew and I have done a lot of events together, and we've traveled together, but there's conversations we haven't even had that I wanted to have. And so here we are. If you guys want to join in, let me know. I'm really going to talk about paper, ink, and nib combos because for me, it makes a difference in what nib I use. And I like textured paper and I like shading inks. So let's first ask you, like, what inks are your favorites personally, and what papers are your?
I tend to stick with blues because they work in most situations. A variety of blues. Not purple blues. I don't really like purple blues.
Okay.
More sky blues and like blue greens.
Do you like them to be shaded, like saturated and kind of sheeny?
I tend to prefer more saturation and sheen.
Okay.
I don't really like the pale ones.
Okay. So shaders or lighter, like desaturated inks.
I don't like desaturated.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that gets us started on what your preferences are. Joe, what's your preferences?
For inks, just in general?
Yeah, like if you're going to use a pen, like your average pen, like do you prefer shaders, sheeners?
Like I've gotten a new pen and I want to kind of test it out. It's like, what is my go-to ink? I like, honestly, really kind of solid colors. If anything, middle of the road colors, maybe a little bit of shading, not heavy shading.
Okay.
I don't like really watery, unsaturated inks because I'm more about legibility with just a little bit of flair in the handwriting.
Okay.
So probably a moderate shader, I would say, is my preference. Although I have been exploring a little bit of subtle shimmer inks recently.
So Matthew, whenever you're getting ready to, Matthew Chen, by the way, if you don't know him, he is a nib grinder by profession. That's his career. But he also loves stationery. And we went on an adventure to Japan, and we tried a lot of stationery. We still could have tried more. A lot of paper.
Yeah, even 2 weeks is not enough.
And to be fair, you did tell me that, and I was like, I can't imagine. But there was a lot of notebooks and papers that we brought back and didn't even test them. There's one that I did test till today. Because it was an older paper that's not made anymore.
Mm.
So let's start actually kind of there. So whenever somebody comes up to you and they're having problems with, and it's really going to end up being a tuning issue typically, when they're having problems with they're not happy with their ink flow, or they're not happy with how the ink is flowing onto the page,
Mm-hmm.
What direction do you take what you're going to do with them?
Usually I just check the time gap because there's around an average that most inks work fine with. And if it goes out of that average, then I start asking like what ink it is that they're using, because most inks flow fine in a properly tuned pen. It's when you go with like certain colors that are really dry that things can sort of need a bit more fine tuning.
Okay. So describe average.
Like it saturates the lines properly to a certain degree. Like it gives you good color on the paper versus like a really dry line where it's hard to see what the line is.
Go ahead.
But also it depends on like what the customer wants. So if they just want it wetter or drier, then I just tune based on that.
Okay. So whenever you're doing the tuning, what's the biggest complaint about when it comes to the issue do more people complain about pens being too wet or too dry?
Usually it's too dry.
Okay.
A lot of companies seem to tune their tines really on the dry side for some reason. Don't know why.
Okay. I wonder about that too. There's several companies that I work with that I know that tune on the dry side.
So we have a question for Matthew.
Okay.
So Inky Biostatistician asked, what is Matthew's favorite grind or stock nib to write with? So what's Matthew's favorite nib to write with?
It depends on what I'm using the pen for. So like if it's small notes and I want to finer nib, if it's just general scribbling, then I'll go with a medium. But I don't really use custom grinds that much. I kind of prefer a consistent line. But if I'm running kanji, then I'll use a kodachi.
And we've got also a question here. I'm very new to fountain pens. Could you maybe explain what nib grinding is?
Yeah.
That is changing the shape of the tipping material on a nib, because the nibs are, for example, a gold nib, the entire nib is not made out of gold. The very tip is a separate material, usually a tungsten alloy, that acts as your contact point to the paper from the pen, and the way it's shaped will affect how your line comes out. So, for example, a cursive italic grind, it'll give you a thick vertical line but a thin horizontal line. And so grinding a nib is taking, for example, a medium nib and turning it into a cursive italic or some other grind where you want a certain type of line variation. Or it can even simply be you got a broad nib and it's too big, so you just want to turn it into a fine, so that's just sizing it down.
So let's back up, because if we're going to the basics, a medium nib, it's kind of rounded. Let's talk about what a standard nib looks like. The ball, like where the contact point is. Mm-hmm. The standard nib is going to be more rounded, like
it should be just like a ball. But some companies make their nibs on the stubbier side. I don't know why, but it is something to keep in mind when buying pens. You might notice certain brands make them stubby,
so
it might not be as expected. And stubby is where you have line variation. The vertical line is just thicker than the horizontal line.
And if it's perfectly rounded and coming out the way we want for a standard medium, it's going to be the same up and down and side to side.
Yeah.
If you have traditional handwriting style, because sometimes people are rotating and it's changing.
Yeah, most companies have the shape of their tipping targeted towards like around that 45 to 50 degree writing angle with zero rotation. So some people that might write at a really high angle can find that their lines come out a little thinner than expected, or they might see a bit of line variation. Usually that can be fixed with some tuning, which requires technically some grinding. But if you don't fall in that average writing style, then you might have issues with stock nibs.
And I know I do see a lot of different writing styles, and you probably do too.
Yeah, definitely.
So, as per my usual, we're off track, but let's go back to just tuning. Mm-hmm. Define what goes into, like, if somebody comes up to you and they're confused on whether they need a nib grind or tuning, describe in detail, because you did say that technically might have a little bit of grinding on certain things. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what nib tuning can be and is for you.
The tuning is adjusting the nib to mainly work properly. So, for example, if the nib is scratchy, then that's smoothing it out. Or if there's not enough ink flow to write at the pressure that the person writes with, and that's increasing the flow. Or if it's too wet, it's closing off the ink flow. Or if it's having hard starting issues where the ink skips, or it doesn't put down a line when the moment you touch the nib to the paper, then it could be a shaping issue that needs to be corrected.
How often is the tuning really related to their handwriting style versus it actually needing to be tuned because the tines are not where they need to be?
Most of the time, it's a pen issue.
Okay.
Rarely is it
the
a person issue.
Okay.
But if the nib is a type that has line variation, that can throw something else into the mix because those can restrict people on how they hold the pen, and if they're not aware of that, then that's a person issue that needs to be corrected.
So now we can talk about, let's go back to what we started with, was the paper and the ink.
we always get sidetracked on these and go down little
And
trails.
And we do that even if we weren't on camera.
Mhm.
Because these are conversations we have off camera too. Because I can, it's nothing for me to text him and ask odd, strange questions. Poor Matthew, but he honestly answers them. So when we were like, really what I was kind of addressing or wanting to address is paper playing a role, because I like textured paper. I like some tooth to my paper, but I know not everybody does, and that's not really the in paper as much right now. Midori cotton is like personally one of my favorites.
Same.
But I know the heavily coated smooth papers are kind of a trend. And so
yeah, and one popular one is Rhodia. A lot of people use Rhodia, but for me, it's too creamy in that, yeah, it's smooth, but when I write, I feel a bit of hesitation as if I'm pushing through the coating. And that creaminess can also hide some feedback that some people don't want.
Right.
When they use another paper, they'll notice it. So that's the issue there with Rhodia, but personally, I just don't like it because it's got that creamy feel that I don't like that bit of hesitation.
Define creamy.
It's like I'm pushing through.
Like it's too smooth?
No,
Like you're pushing through something
like I'm pushing through literal cream, like the coating, yeah. Like it cushions the nib, and so yes, it'll feel smooth, but it'll, like the nib won't glide on the paper.
So do you have a paper that you use to test nibs when you're working?
I use a
Like a
variety. I use
paper?
Life or MD paper.
Okay.
Because usually they're more texture, like if they have a bit of texture,
Mhm.
I can feel things better.
So if you if you could recommend one paper, I get asked a lot, what is the paper that you use as your baseline to determine whether something's a good nib or not? Do you have a specific paper that you use to test your fountain pens to use as your standard? Mine personally is either MD or MD cotton.
At home, I have one of those blocks of 500 pages that I still have not worked through, surprisingly, but I just use one of those.
And that's just a regular MD, I think, right?
Yeah.
And someone just said, I'm happy to hear Matthew talk about the feeling of Rhodia. For me, it feels like it drags on the nib, but I rarely hear anyone else say that.
Yeah, that's another way to
interesting.
describe it, the drag.
Okay, the drag.
Yeah, the drag.
And as a left-handed person, I honestly don't ever recommend Rhodia to lefties.
Yeah, more coated paper is a bit more sensitive to hand oils, so that can lead to skipping on the paper where it's not the nib issue, but some people might think it is if they're not aware of hand oils being a problem.
But Rhodia is popular enough that when you're at a show or an event, you have a Rhodia pad for people to test their pens with.
Most people like it, so that's sort of like the average safe thing to go with for people to try out. I always suggest you bring your own paper for testing because that's obviously that's what you're going to use. So
that's a pen show tip too. If you're going to be testing pens and inks, it shows bring the paper that you're going to be writing on.
Or even the ink too. Like after you're done grinding, fill it up with the ink you want to use, and if it needs any extra tuning based on that, then we can do that on the spot.
So, what is your favorite? What is in your notebook that you're currently using, and then what are your favorite papers?
I have a variety of
paper
papers.
nib combos that you like.
I can't really say it's a specific nib and paper combo because the nibs that I use work on all these papers anyways. But in here, I've got Grafilo, I've got Masia, and Life, which are the main ones. I'm not sure what Chibundo uses, but that's also a good paper. But I use Life quite a bit and Grafilo.
Yeah.
Those two are my favorite. Grafilo first and then Life. Grafilo is a little less accessible because they don't make it in too many formats, but Life makes a ton of formats for the writing papers.
Mhm.
So it's not hard to find something to shove Life paper into.
Now I even found the 6-ring Life. We're excited about
Mhm.
having it actually.
Yeah. And both of those are, I mean, both Graphilo and Life, they're smooth papers, but they do still have some texture
Yeah,
to them. I mean, are they coated or uncoated papers?
it should be coated.
Coated.
Well, Life makes a lot of kinds of papers.
Yeah.
Thing.
The Noble Note. I think when I guess
Yeah.
most Americans think of Life, they think of Noble Note
Yeah.
because that's what's most.
Because I'm a huge
Available
bank
here.
paper fan, but it's like I love Life bank paper.
Yeah, not all Life papers the same. Because there was one type that I tried. I thought it would be good because I think it had premium in the name, and it was not. It was not fountain pen friendly.
And they have some letter writing paper, like the several types of letter writing paper that I like, but I don't think it's the same as the Noble.
The
paper.
onion skin or the airmail
Yeah.
paper.
Oh, I do. We can't keep that in stock. Airmail paper isn't even fair to talk about though because it's so different,
So different.
so thin. Have you seen airmail paper?
I believe I used some many years ago, but not recently enough.
Years ago. So Life, like in general, when you have airmail paper, it's gonna be super thin, almost onion skin, somewhere between Tomoe River and onion skin. That's how I would describe airmail paper. And that was
It's really light. You really can only write on one side of it because it's so translucent. Though I have seen people try to write on both sides of it, and it was
I
impressive.
have people that do, and they're real proud of it, and they'll bring it to me and show me because it's like, look, I was able to do this. With a saturated ink, that doesn't work as well. And with you can't do it with a broad nib and a saturated ink combo. This is where I was talking about my combo thing. It's like
Okay.
people bring it to you, like, and they have this idea.
Yeah.
I want to make this paper work with this. Yeah.
Most fountain pen friendly papers these days work with most pen and ink, nib and ink combos. But every now and then I get somebody trying to write on copy paper. And for those people, it's sort of beyond their control because it's workplace paper. They can't really do much about that.
Posting nib.
Yeah. So usually those people usually are aware that they need a finer nib with drier lines. So it's just they already know what they want.
Well, and I have to tell people, I talk to people a lot about dry and wet ink. So there's dry inks that, whenever you don't get to control the paper, it's always going to be finer nib, drier ink. Like whenever you are stuck at work with paper that is not the quality that we've become accustomed to.
Yeah.
Are you using the same kind of paper in both your Bible and your mini?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
It sort of depends on like the layouts of the papers too, like what's on the paper. But for general like scribbling, it's usually Life or Graphilo.
Okay.
And then for the dated stuff, there's some Da Vinci, which is pretty much Tomoe River.
I'm a Da Vinci. I like the Da Vinci. So.
Yeah. And then there's also some Masia ones.
I love that there's so much variety in the 6-ring format. Like if you really want to customize a journal or a notebook with the different types of paper, the 6-ring, you can do it with disc too.
Well, and you can also just punch holes and rearrange the heck out of the stuff.
Oh yeah.
Is that Nagasawa?
That's Nagasawa, yeah. The Masia paper.
You can. It's gonna be
They've got papers where it's like ink sample things, swatches.
Oh, that's fun. What paper do they use for that?
Masia.
Masia?
They're a company that I guess I don't think they make a lot of easily purchasable notebooks in Japan. As far as I'm aware, I've only seen them with Nagasawa.
And I did bring these into the U.S. I have them.
They're a company that has a history of making, I think, children's books. But yeah, they've been in the paper making business for a while.
There's just so many different types of paper that we don't know about and that we don't have access to.
I think whenever Matthew and I were testing paper, I was taking paper home every night, and then we tested for, I don't know, maybe an hour, and we were like ready for more like paper because they were bringing us notebooks and papers, and some of it we were familiar with already anyway. And it was like, Oh no, we want more. Like we want more paper. Bring me something I haven't seen and tried, and bring me lots of it because I want to try all the paper. It's like a whole separate hobby almost.
Paper as opposed to pens, like
Yes,
paper
like,
is a separate thing.
that's where
it's
16
not
binders
as
come in handy.
it's not as obvious the nuances of papers,
Mhm.
especially with all the companies using other companies' papers. So you have to find out, oh, is this company
Mhm.
A using company's B paper, or are they making their own paper?
Those collaborations made it a little bit more complicated because there were several things we saw that it ended up being like collaborations
Yeah.
when we researched it. Okay, so we've kind of talked about the combos, but whenever whenever somebody does come to you with, let's say, printer paper, or they work, say, at a hospital, or it's the,
Mhm.
is there a nib grind that you recommend in particular, or do you try to just go like with?
I just go based off of how fine they need it.
And then do you
Yeah.
ask what ink they're using?
Sometimes I ask, but for most of the time, most inks aren't really going to work well on inkjet paper, anyways. The ink that I found works really well in inkjet is Ackerman's Iron Gall Blue Black, but obviously not everybody can use an Iron Gall ink because of steel nibs or the need to clean it out a little more often. So it's a bit of a tough cookie.
Okay, you said cleaning.
Cleaning.
How often would you say that when people bring a nib to you that needs to be tuned, that the pen needs to be, like, they don't clean their pen well? They have poor pen hygiene.
Thankfully, these days, not too many. It's mostly when somebody has a pen that's not writing properly and they sort of given up and threw it in a drawer and forgot about it for a year or two. So it's just caked with dried ink and that needs to be cleaned out. So if you're ever frustrated with a pen and want to put it aside, please clean it out first.
Absolutely.
Always start by cleaning the pen, flushing it with some water, maybe a little bit of detergent.
It's kind of the equivalent of turn it on and turn it off and on again.
Mhm.
I feel like, don't you think that's kind of
Yeah.
it's like that equivalent of, because it is, for me, it is something we see a lot.
Well, and sometimes too, like when you get a new pen, if it's not writing perfectly out of the box, sometimes it does need to be cleaned before you ink it up, even because there's residue from manufacturing, there may be some dried ink from any testing that the manufacturer might have done on the nib. So you should always clean your new pens out, or at least flush them once with some water before. So we do have one more question. Just someone saying thank you for yesterday. I visited the shop and right now I'm testing out all the ink samples with my glass pen and all the paper I bought. So yes, thank you for coming by.
I hope you're having fun. We would be playing with those inks also.
If we could get to the shop. We're in a different setting today. We're making do with a makeshift, little bit of a makeshift studio.
Well, and if that's a local person, they realize we kind of thought we had a little more time to get to his store and then back to
the hotel where we're staying. But the weather took a turn this morning earlier than we thought it would. We weren't supposed to get the snow and the ice until. They were saying afternoon, really around noon, but it started 9:30, 9:45, and we were.
I think I texted you like 8:30, and I looked out the window. I was like, "Oh,
it's snowing!
It's snowing!
Snowing already!" But and now the sleet and freezing rain has started this afternoon, so we're not going to get back there till at least tomorrow evening or the day after, probably.
But if you're going to be stranded, it should be with some pen friends, right? Like you can play with the paper, the notebooks, and the stationery.
Exactly, and we're well stocked for the weekend.
And I brought like 6 or 7 notebooks in here, but
Matthew, when are you gonna start grinding glass nibs? Speaking of glass pens, have you started your glass pen grinding operation
kind
yet?
of thing, right?
I haven't really tried.
Maybe we could.
I
Hmm.
don't know if I want to deal with that.
Okay, you can maybe privately do it, but not,
It's a whole new world. We say that because now everybody has gotten into fountain pen nib grinding, but glass pen nib grinding is apparently a thing in Japan as well. glass pen nib
When you
modification.
say that, it reminded me. Can we talk briefly about? I was doing the Kobe show, and we were both attendees, and we're normally never attendees at a show. What was different? So if we were going to educate people, because we're usually behind the counter, what would you want to educate people about after having just gone and been an attendee? You know what I mean? Like the perspective changed for me a little bit on walking around and being an attendee versus being behind the table. Because I realized that
Here's the question.
Do you think it changes? Like, did it kind of help you understand both perspectives better? No.
Not really.
You were on a hunt for a pen,
Yeah.
right? And you had the time to go and do it, pretty much.
Yeah,
I was on the hunt for a glass dip pen always.
I mean, the perspective for me, like, I guess I'll take this one. I mean, like last time I attended a show, I try to always attend one show a year somewhere as an attendee to kind of just like, I don't know, get back to why I like to do this and to do the shows. And it kind of, the one thing that always comes back to me, like as a vendor or a retailer, is to make sure that the stuff on your table is easy to view and it's accessible for people to pick up and to be able to actually, don't just pile everything up. I mean, you want to have a little bit of an element of a treasure hunt on your table, but at the same time, you also want to make it clear so that people know what everything is. Make it easy for people to find stuff and to discover new stuff.
I had kind of lost that and going allowed me to get that excitement back, but that does make sense. There was tables we couldn't get to.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was even somebody else helped us get to a table to the
leather one.
Okay, so somebody has a question here. I was wondering if I could use a fine grit sandpaper on the glass pen because there seems to be a slight rough spot. I'm going to let Matthew handle that one because I am not at all informed enough.
You can, just got to figure out and experiment on what grit you want to finish off as. Obviously, you want to look at it under a loop and see where, like, what spot is giving you the rough bit and see if anything is there, like a corner, or if it's kind of matte and not as shiny as the rest of it. And try to not spend too much time on that spot when you're sanding with the rougher grits because you might make a flat spot. And if it's particularly close to the grooves where the inks sit in, you got to be careful there because if you grind away a bit of that groove, it might make ink getting to the paper a bit harder on that spot. So
I'm already smiling because I'm like, he can do this. He can do this. He can do this.
I mean, go slowly. I think that's the key. Don't take a lot off if you're gonna remove a little bit or smooth it out. Go like a stroke at a time. Let's say, and start with the finest grit sandpaper you can find.
I was gonna say like
Mylar film,
maybe just a little bit more grit than that.
12,000, and if that doesn't do anything, you go down a step.
I was thinking
10,000,
8,000,
6,000. I mean, even like 4,000 or 6,000 grit.
It's pretty smooth.
Still pretty smooth. Just want to make sure you don't stay on the same spot because then it's a flat spot, and then you got corners at the edge of that flat spot, and then that'll just.
Then it sends you on a roller coaster of continuing to do that.
Yeah, then you wonder like, oh, why isn't it smooth? And you do it more, and then that makes it worse. So. Try to rotate it a bit. Try to make it round.
So we've got another question here. Matthew, can you explain how a nib grinder develops their interpretation of a standard nib grind, and how far can you take it? I guess the question is, how do you if you take your own riff on a specific nib grind, how long does it take you to come up with that, or how do you come up with that? And I guess second, how far can you take it before it becomes a new grind in and of itself?
But then what's a standard grind?
Maybe I would say italic, a cursive italic.
Well, if you're asking about like how I've categorized my grinds, like standard, special, or whatever, that's partially to keep it simple for customers. Because like the standard grinds are ones that are more common, most people are used to, and also not as difficult for me to grind because they're pretty straightforward. And then once you start adding stuff like a reverse side, then it gets a little funky.
So, in asking you how long it took you to develop, so we could take you have your own, you have a nib grind of your own.
Kind of that I. Yeah, well, I can't really say my own because I learned it from Nagahara, and he gives me permission to use it.
Well, what about the year, whatever?
It's still tied to him because it's just flipping.
But you
the
are the
grind
one that
upside down.
developed it. How long did that take? Or it was like a quick
That
decision,
was-
like a fluke.
It
not
was
a
more of
fluke.
like, oh, what if we flip this upside down?
I don't want to say fluke because it's the wrong word, but
And Matthew's talking about his Uranagi grind for those who are just joining or wanted to.
so describe the Uranagi grind and then how, like, maybe that the time process that like the
so
thought process behind
The
it.
uranagi is the kodachi upside down. So on the regular side, you'll get a fine line, like an extra fine, or if you don't want it so fine, it can be widened up a little bit. And the reverse side is a smaller version of the kodachi.
Now that means you have to.
And
Even-
the kodachi is a grind meant to emulate brushstrokes for Japanese or Chinese calligraphy, so where you get the thick to thin brushstrokes. However, for Western writing, it more of acts like a really round architect. So you won't get the maximum line variation like the architect, but it'll still be a decent amount. But you won't be limited to one vertical angle, and the line width changes based on that vertical angle. So at a higher angle, you get a thinner line. And in case you were referring to standard nibs as in like what a normal nib should be, I guess I go based off of what people expect the nibs to do. So like a standard medium would be around a certain size and give the same line width no matter what direction it's being written with. And depending on the orientation, most people, I guess, would be around 45, 55 degree writing angle with no rotation. So being able to do that with that type of handwriting would be standard. But I would still consider it somewhat standard, even if it had to be modified to write at a higher angle. But for rotation, then that would be turning it into a type of oblique.
And then, how old were you when you got started grinding nibs?
What?
How long have you been grinding nibs?
Business-wise, since 2021, but I've been fiddling with nib grinding since 2017, and I got into fountain pens in 2015.
Okay, so you got into fountain pens, then you're like, oh, I need to try these things. And what did you do? Try.
Did you start tuning your own nibs first? Is that
Yeah.
kind of how it?
2015, I was still a junior year of high school and going into college. Didn't have that much money, so I just sort of focused it all on pens, and if it needed fixing, I had to figure out how to fix it myself. There's always had a bit of that DIY thing in me, and my dad. I guess
Your dad.
definitely, I got it from my dad. Just even like with bikes or whatever, I maintained them myself. I even built my own PC. So if I can do it myself, why not? Like even now, I develop my own black and white film and now color negative film. Partially because I'm too lazy to go to the lab all the time. So I can do it myself. Why not? And of course, because I was a college student, no money to send it off to somebody else to do it for me. So got to do it on my own.
So you just adapted and
Yeah, I just figured out how to make things work. And then I took my attempts to professionals to see how I did, where I could improve. That's pretty much how I guess I impressed Nagahara into teaching me how to do the naginata properly.
Awesome.
here we are.
Here we are years later with a career. So, Matthew, where are people, like, how do people how do people get a grind from you or get their pens tuned? Where can they find you?
Best place would be at a pen show or a store event to do it in person, because that gets it done on the spot. And if you happen to need extra tweaking because of whatever ink you're using or how you write or the paper you use, then that can just be done right there, because I can observe and tweak based on that.
So somebody just asked, how is a journaler nib different? Is that a style or a size? A journaler nib, I believe it's actually a brand or a branded nib. It's a cursive italic nib by and it's the name given to a grind that Custom Nib Studio did for Esterbrook.
But it's just a medium cursive italic, right?
Yes.
It's around pretty much that. I can't say if it's exactly that or not. I have not looked at it because it's not my grind. Don't really want to copy something like that because that's Custom Nib Studio's thing. But for the writing effect, it's pretty close to a medium cursive italic.
All right, and Matthew, you mentioned you were going to be at store events. You were telling me the other day, how many store events are you doing this year? Store events and pen shows.
24 so far.
25.
Oh yeah, well, I guess 25 now. 25. Last year
you'll add
was,
more.
I think last year was 19, 18 or 19, and I was trying to decrease the number for this year. Somehow I increased it by a lot.
You were going to decrease it? That's funny. I'm sorry. So if people go to your website, can they see where all the events are going to be at?
It's on my Instagram. I've pinned the image of my stuff listed out.
Okay.
I should probably put it on the website, but I think my Instagram gets a bit more attention because the website's more of just like a business card type funnel thing.
And what is your Instagram account?
Pactagon, Pactagon.
And somebody just asked, are you going to be in Chicago?
Yeah, I'll be in Chicago for the Chicago Pen Show and the Atlas Stationery Sidewalk Sale and Holiday Expo.
So you'll be there. You'll be in Chicago 3 times,
Yes.
different parts of the year.
Yeah.
May is the Chicago.
August is the Sidewalk Sale. December is the Holiday Expo.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, I guess, do you guys have any more questions you want to ask me?
If you guys have any questions, feel free to email us, contact us.
Absolutely. And we'll have, we actually earlier today, we just recorded episode 2 of the podcast. So that will be coming out and Matthew will be making an appearance.
So you can find Matthew on at an in-person event. But the way to find him is through his Instagram account and to find out where he's going to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can find Joe with General and Stationery when it's not
Snowing. Ice storming. Well, I'm on there online all the time, so you can find me on the website. But yeah, I'll be in the store. Our store's open Thursday through Saturday most weeks.
And I'm at menace1938.com or here on the paper trail.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks
Bye,
for joining the
y'all.
stream. Bye.